How did you find out your significant other was cheating on you? I told my wife that I had an after work event scheduled to go from 5 to 9 p.m., but it got cancelled at the start of the workday, such that I came home earlier than expected, like a normal workday. As I pull into my driveway, I see two other cars parked there, already which I don't recognize. As I walk towards the front door, I hear music playing fairly loudly, coming from inside. I enter my home and see a variety of bottles of alcohol sitting on the kitchen counter and hear all sorts of commotion upstairs, as if there's a party going on. I go up the stairs to investigate and realize it's coming from our bedroom. I open the door, and what do I see? 5 men in the room with my wife. 3 of them inside of her, and 1 other in each of her hands. She looks at me in total shock. We got into an argument that ended in me spending the night away from our place. I went to a friend's house. When I got back the next day, dude had banana bread in a pan I didn't recognize sitting on the counter. He didn't know how to make banana bread, but his on-again, off-again ex did, who he had been with once in a while since high school and whose banana bread making skills he spoke about a lot, did and made positively fire banana bread. I had some of it, it was fire. Suffice to say, he invited banana bread lady to hang out, perhaps spend the night with him the second I was out for a night. We were separated and I was miserable, so I had an appointment to see a shrink. The night before, I couldn't sleep because I was going over in my head how the appointment would go. I needed to be able to articulate what I wanted, my goal. I wanted to be able to move back into our home and begin working on the relationship together. I got really wound up about the likelihood that she wasn't even at the house that moment. You see, she would often go out with coworkers for drinks on work nights, and I had driven out our house to pick up some of her belongings earlier in the evening and passed her driving in her car, so I had a consuming thought. While I'm miserable being kept outside our house, is she even there, enjoying it? So at 2 a.m. or so, I decided to rid myself of this question and drove there. She wasn't there. I called her, because if she was still out drinking with coworkers, she shouldn't drive herself home. No answer. I probably called about 4 to 5 times in an hour. I eventually looked at our still shared mobile online account and found one number I didn't recognize that had been called nearly every day for quite some time. I called it. No one answered and I got a voicemail for someone, but wasn't certain who. I kept calling her and she eventually answered at about 5:30 a.m. I asked if she was okay. She said yes. I explained why I was calling. She said she was fine. I asked where she was and she said of friends. I asked who and she said I think you know. I said I don't know who. This went back and forth a couple times until she said his name. Unbeknownst to me, but suspected, his number was the one I had called earlier, so they knew the cat was out of the bag well before I did. I didn't sleep before that therapy session, and the thing that the therapist said that struck me is, what you knew of your marriage is no longer. You have an entirely new relationship now. It was poignant because I was still thinking about mending things, seeing this new development as merely another problem to solve. Clearly, it was vastly different than the existing problems. Firstly, she asked me what I thought about taking a short break so she could find herself and figure out it being with me any longer was truly what she wanted in life. Mind you, she was 25 and I was 32, so I figured she was wanting to experience her 20s while she could, especially with my more laid-back lifestyle. I figured it would be a great learning lesson for both of us, so I agreed and we were going to take a few weeks apart. Well, a few nights before she left our apartment, we were living together in an expensive apartment in the major city. We decided to watch a movie together. During the entire movie, she was texting somebody. I figured it was her friend she was going to stay with during the few weeks break. Then I noticed she would start to hide her phone from me, turn the screen away from me when texting, taking her phone to the bathroom, etc. All these telltale signs that this wasn't her friend. So I basically confronted her right then and there, told her I knew she was cheating on me and just to come clean and tell me who it was, when they met, how, etc. She looked like a deer in headlights, but surprisingly came clean about the whole thing. She told me that she met a guy at her work a couple months prior, and that she had been seeing him while she was living with me. She told me that any time she said she was with her friends, she was really with him, and that there was no use in hiding it anymore because she was on her way out anyways. Turns out, she was using the break as a cover-up and planned on blocking me on all forms of communication, and basically never speaking to me again. Once she was out of our place, she said she was hoping I wouldn't find out so she could make a clean escape. Yeah, that was the hardest thing I ever had to hear because I loved her so much. Was willing to take a bullet for her. So yeah, she ditched me, blocked me, and left me heartbroken with an apartment I couldn't afford. So I had to scramble and find a shitty studio to move into while she was off living it up with her new man. I will never forgive her for the physical stress and mental anguish she put me through. Caught him in a lie about 4 years in. He played soccer a couple times a week, and one night when he usually played soccer, he texted me, and he said that he had to work late. Didn't think anything of it, but then he called me for something different and said, "I'll see you after soccer." I said, "I thought you were working late," and instead of a smooth, "Oh yeah, I just decided to go to soccer," or something like that, he seemed caught off guard and fumbled through a response. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my suspicions were aroused, and the next morning, he got a text while he was in the shower from her, asking when they were going to do it again with a kissy face. I left before he got out of the shower, and just quietly disappeared from his life. I knew him well enough to know a quiet exit would make him crazy, so that's what I did. He still tries to contact me through socials and even calling from different numbers, but I haven't spoken to him since. It's been about a year. Edit. I should probably clarify that it was confirmed by a mutual friend that he was cheating with a girl he worked with. He was acting very strange when he came back from AIT, taking calls on his cell outside, tearing up letters he took out of his duffel. As he was leaving for his next duty station, he called me and said he forgot his journal with the song lyrics he was working on. Could I ship it to him? I grabbed the journal and a letter fell out. I saw his name in a feminine handwriting I didn't recognize, so I unfolded and read it. It pretty much confirmed the affair, but when I went into the trash and taped together the letters that he had torn up and thrown away, I had the whole timeline as well of the unkind lies he told about me, and his plans to divorce me for her. He tried to deny it at first when I confronted him, but when I quoted one of her letters to him, he knew I am dead to rights. We were long distance, and then COVID hit. Starting that June, she went radio silent. Then I heard from her that August describing this pitiful story about how she had to move out of the state and was working 3 minimum wage jobs to stay afloat, and that her mom was dying of cancer. Then radio silence again. She was stupid enough to not consider the fact that we followed one another on social media. That social media included Reddit. So she asked a question on her Reddit handle about why and her so aren't getting mail after moving into their new townhouse. The amazing thing is that when I pointed this out to her, she did respond almost immediately. It made up this entire other pretend life story about how she was asking the question on behalf of her boss, who was old and didn't use social media. She also called me deluded for imagining she would cheat, and that I needed professional help to get over my state of delirium. She is now married to the guy who she swore was a figment of my imagination. We had a rocky moment in our relationship. Long distance. She was starting to struggle with it. She met a random guy her aunt introduced her to. She was talking with him a lot, ghosting me for a week or two at a time to stay at his place, and getting defensive when I asked questions about him. Eventually, she told me she wanted to have a break. Didn't want me to keep stressing over shit, so I told her I didn't want to talk to her for maybe a month then. 2 months passed. I tried to better myself and try to get her out of my life. She messaged me to see if I was okay and if I wanted to hang with her for a bit. The next day, I found out she left me and got with that bloke and slept with him a few days before we started to talk again. The bloke was already very questionable. He had a history of abuse and was a massive womanizer. Her breaking point was when he tried to pressure her in a threesome. She didn't join the threesome, but of course she slept with him again. Anyways, since she's left the guy and we've gotten back together, but it hurts my trust like a motherfucker, because she didn't tell me any of this until 6 months later. I had to basically push her to tell me. Not me, but my best friend. Once every semester, we would go on a hiking, mountaineering, canoeing trip, and that would take 4 to 5 days. One of these times, on our first rappel, another experienced climber didn't take all the safety measures and fell off a 5-meter drop, breaking his ankle and collarbone. Really messed up situation. We had to pick him up and get him to a hospital, so our trip ended really fast and we went home the next day. My friend was still in shock to drive, so I picked him up with my car and another friend took his car. We leave him in his home, park his car, and we leave. He enters his home, finds his wife sleeping naked on the couch with another dude and his PS5 still running. They had their fun and the dude thought having sex with another girlfriend isn't enough. I'm going to use his PlayStation also. While I was on the road, I get a call from him to go back and pick him up. He didn't even wake them up. The next days were tough. We had a business Instagram account that we both had access to. One day, I was scrolling through it and we were being recommended a lot of videos with young women not wearing much. Our business had nothing to do with that type of content, so I looked at what we were interacting with and I'm sure you can guess what I saw. I'm not sure if he was cheating or if he was trying to cheat and not really succeeding. He would try to start conversations with women about sex and get their numbers, etc. I think he thought I didn't really look at the account since he was in school for marketing, which I loaned him the money for, so he wanted to run it. The fallout sucked. He said it was just pixels on a screen and I shouldn't care, and never really took much responsibility for hurting me and the business. I'm still not sure what to think about it all.